Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Joe Ellis. I'm an Olympus educator and wedding and portrait photographer in Dallas, Texas. And today we're going to talk about shooting pictures of your family under the Christmas lights. Let's get into it. Okay, so last night my family and I went out to view some Christmas lights just to get in the holiday spirit, and we saw a ton of people out there having the same idea and taking millions of photographs with their cell phones. And I saw a few people out there with real cameras, but hardly anyone had a flash. And I just thought it'd be fun to go over the idea of how you would get a really great photograph of your kids or your family at night with Christmas lights, or maybe just in front of the Christmas tree. And so I have 3 different strategies for how to do this. I thought I'd go through them with you guys, just talking about the ins and outs of how to get this done and make it look just the way you would want. Okay, so in reality, there are kind of 4 ways to deal with this. There's ambient light only. You can use a video light, which I'll go over in a minute, one of my favorite strategies. You could use direct flash, or you can use indirect or off-camera flash. And so I kind of want to go over what it takes to kind of get that done in each of those cases and what the pros and cons are. So the first one is ambient light, and this can work really well if you find just the right location. But a problem with ambient light only when you're outside at night is that oftentimes the ambient light that you are under is not the color that really works best for you. It's like it could be kind of green or magenta, or it could be taking on the color of the Christmas lights that you're in front of. And so you cannot control the direction, you can't control the softness, you can't control the intensity. And so you're kind of at a disadvantage there where you just have no way to kind of modify anything. And when you're shooting Christmas lights, you're already sort of predisposed to being in a certain location because of the way the lights are. So this is what most people are doing with their cell phones. And just to show you what that looks like, I did take a couple of photos with my iPhone 11 Pro, and this is what most of the people last night were getting. And they were huddling next to the trees trying to get more lights on them, and I'm sure that was getting some really strange colors. And it's not that the iPhone doesn't do a great job here, I mean, especially for a phone. And it does a great, mostly in the sense that it has wonderful HDR. It manages to pull up the shadows and pull down the highlights so that you don't have anything that's blown out. But if you look at this picture, in Photoshop at 100%, for example, if I just launch this into Photoshop and we look at it at 100%, it really, it's lost a lot of detail because it's shooting at about 1000 ISO for the phone, and it's just, it's good for social media and for online sharing. It's probably fine. But as soon as you go to even make a 4x6 print or an 8x10 print or put it in an album or something like that, it's really lost a lot of its pep compared to the quality that you get from it during the daytime. And this is a major disadvantage of cell phones, and I think most people know that, but if it's all you have, it's all you have. If I was going to give some advice to people who have this, it would be to go ahead and try using the flash, even though I find that's pretty weak and doesn't do a great job. If you have a video light, this could be an awesome option. And one video light that is available to everyone, or at least a lot of people with iPhones or other Android phones, is that if you have a friend who has a phone, you can take their flashlight and turn it on and turn it into a video light. And then you can use that from much closer distance than the one who's taking the photo. And that will help add intensity to the video light and give you a better looking picture. If you have a dedicated video light like I do, then you can have a lot more flexibility in terms of where you place the light and things like that. So that's the ambient exposure. So you can't control the color, and of course you're working at slower shutter speeds probably because you're outside at night, so you're risking subject motion and things like that. So all in all, I don't think ambient light is a great place to be. All right, so next up, and I'm going to show you all 4 photographs here on screen as I talk about it. Next up is video light. And the video light that I have is this little aperture. It's the H198. And the upside to the video light is twofold. Number one, you can see exactly where the light is falling on your subjects, which is awesome because that way you can place it where you really feel like the shadows are falling the way that you want. And then the other really big advantage of the LED panel is that you can use it as an autofocus assist light. So you're really getting, it's much easier on the camera to really nail the focus on somebody's eyes, for example, if there's a little bit of extra light there versus if they're in complete shadow outside at night. So, it does work oftentimes, and I use it for all kinds of portraits when I'm working on wedding days, for example, and you can be very creative. You can place it behind them, to the side. You can do all kinds of lighting patterns with one or two of these video light panels. So that is certainly something I think that everybody would benefit to have in their bag. Okay, so getting beyond that, let's get into the heart of the matter, and that is using a strobe. And of course, one of my very favorite strobes you can have for the Olympus system is the FL-700WR flash. This is a radio-controlled flash unit that you can put on your OMD that does a beautiful job. So these little flashes not only can go on your hot shoe, but they're triggered off camera via radio, this is the first Olympus flash to offer that capability. So if you have two of these, or if you have a transmitter in one of these, you can use it off camera and get that really consistent radio communication between units. So just going over the steps of what to do with flash. You would go ahead and first things first in all of these cases is that you would find the exposure that you want for the background. So that means that you want to take a second, put your camera in manual exposure. Like in my case, I figured 800 ISO would be a good place to start. And then I went and rolled my aperture all the way down to 1.8 and then found the shutter speed that I thought made the background look bright and pretty and not overexposed. And that was about a 1/15 of a second. Then to use a flash in this scenario, you would just put it on camera. You can go direct flash and make sure the flash is in basic TTL. So on this flash here, we have a lot of different options, but just looking at the interface here. So when you turn your flash on, the first mode that you'll see is TTL. And that's the one that we would want for the first case, direct flash, on camera direct flash. So the flash exposure compensation, if you're getting too much or too little, is just to the right of the scroll wheel and then up and down. So -1 or +1 would mean more flash on the plus side, less flash on the minus side. So I just left it on 0. I would put the flash on my camera, and then I would point it directly ahead. And if you do that with the exact same settings that you had for ambient, then you're going to have a beautiful bright background, and the flash is going to illuminate whatever is in its range, which is maybe 10 feet away and 10, 15 feet away, and give you perfect exposure for that subject that's right there. And that is picture number 3. And so in this picture, we're getting very nice background light. We're getting very nice illumination on them. The light is coming straight forward, which means there's no shadows, no modeling on the faces in terms of seeing the three-dimensionality of their faces. But it is a vast improvement in sharpness and usability from the ambient one, just in terms of the quality of the image in sharpness and things like that. Now, my preferred method, because I'm overkill when it comes to being a photo dad, is I do love a little bit of off-camera flash. I'm not a person that does a lot of on-camera work when it comes to shooting portraits. And so my go-to kit in this scenario was the FL-700WR and its tiny little transmitter. So to use this system, all you do is take the flash off the camera, and you're going to go ahead and put it as a wireless receiver. So I would just press the wireless button and I would go down to receive. And now I can see the flash is in group A, channel 10. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the transmitter on my camera. And we can see group A here is set to TTL with its flash exposure compensation of 0. And then I take this little flash, and what I did was I put a little softbox on it, the Rogue softbox. And it just attaches to the front of the flash here, puts a little softbox on it, and gives me a nice soft illumination for something that's relatively close to the camera. And then I can just hold it in my hand while I'm shooting, or I can have my wife hold it, and then I can get an even more beautiful flash exposure. And that is what we're seeing in picture number 4. So the big difference between pictures number 3 and picture number 4 is that you can see that the one side of their face has shadow on it because the light's coming from one side. Both pictures are beautifully lit, but one is way more three-dimensional and just has a nice polish to it. So if you have the capability of taking your flash off camera, and I also do this with the Godox system, of course, and you can get really beautiful, quick, and easy portraits with a little collapsible softbox. And that's kind of my ultimate preferred method when I'm running out the door, something I can squish into my camera bag that's always there for me. And then this little kit winds up being just completely amazing flexibility when you want to do something with the strobe. So I want to go over one other thing, and that is dealing with the differences between what happens to the background of a flash exposure and what happens in the foreground. And this is a key principle to learn about flash photography, and it's particularly important when you're out shooting Christmas lights where the background of your picture is very, very important. And this works indoors or outdoors or anywhere that you might happen to be. So remember a second ago, and I said when you go out to photograph the Christmas lights, the first thing is to find an exposure for the lights themselves in the background. So in my case, that was 1/15 of a second at f1.8 at ISO 800. If I just turn the flash on, TTL, point it forward, this is what I would get. So the background is nicely illuminated. The flash is not reaching any of the trees in the background. They're not being affected by the flash. But the flash is doing a great job of illuminating Vivian. Now, if I close down my shutter speed to 1/30th of a second, you can see it did not affect the flash. The flash is still giving us the same illumination. She is still illuminated in exactly the same way, but it did affect the background. The background got one stop darker. So here's a way that you can control the two things. You can control the flash with flash exposure compensation and how much light is hitting your subject, and then you can control the background with the shutter speed. If I close down again, you can see this is 15, 30th, 60th of a second, and then 1/125th. So if you put your flash on program, for example, and you're not doing this in manual exposure, it might choose 125th of a second at f3.5, which means that it's going to drastically underexpose the background of your picture. And it might do that just because it wants you to pick something that's really safe in terms of depth of field, in terms of, making sure your subject is very sharp and that kind of thing. It's just a very sort of middling exposure. Let's say f3.5 at 100th of a second or 125th of a second. But it's going to do a really poor job of exposing for the background of your flash exposure. So if you put it in manual, expose for the background first, then turn the flash on, then you're going to get a really beautiful balanced fill flash or balanced flash scenario. So if you ever wanted to control the background lightness of your photo, you want to use the shutter speed of your camera when you're using strobe. You want to use the shutter speed of your camera to control the background brightness. You want to use the flash exposure compensation to control the amount of flash that's coming out of the camera if you want the flash to be dimmer or brighter. Well, that's what I've got today, guys. Thanks for watching. Please let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see y'all in the next one.